And the UFC is back this Saturday night from the UFC Apex. In the main event in the middleweight division, we have got Marvin Vettori taking on Jared Cannonier. Two men have already challenged for the middleweight championship against the current champion in Israel Adesanya, but two guys trying to make their way back. It's a good fight. It's interesting seeing where these two guys are going to go from this fight, considering, again, Vettori's already lost twice to Adesanya, and Cannonier just got a shot last summer. So 14 fights on this card. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel. Tomorrow, we will have both our PFL 5 and our Bellator 297 predictions here on the channel as well. So go make sure to come back tomorrow for those videos. But now let's get into this 14 fight card prediction. So our first fight will be in the light heavyweight division. We have got the Ultimate Fighter runner-up in Zach Pauga taking on Modestas Bukauskas. Of course, Pauga originally fought in the UFC at 265 pounds, but he lost his first fight to Mo Usman. Usman finished him in the second round by knockout. He comes back in his second fight, fights at light heavyweight against the Beverly Hills Ninja in Jordan Wright. This was a co-main event of Andrade versus Blanchfield. Now Pauga is in the first fight of a fight night, but anyways, he beats Jordan Wright by unanimous decision. It just kind of begs to ask the question, what else is on that card? Let's not even get into that. Anyways, Pauga beats Jordan Wright by unanimous decision. Now he gets Modestas Bukauskas, and Bukauskas is a guy who was cut from the UFC after losing 3 straight fights. His first fight, he beats Andreas Michailidis, then drops 3 in a row to Jimmy Crute, Michal Solshashek, and Khalil Roundtree. Messes up his knee in the Roundtree fight. It's an oblique kick that really messes up Bukauskas right to the knee. But he comes back, he goes to Cage Warriors, he beats Lee Chadwick in his first fight, then he wins the Cage Warriors light heavyweight championship against Chuck Campbell, finishing him in the 4th round. And now Bukauskas back in the UFC. He gets Tyson Pedro in his first fight, and he beats Pedro by unanimous decision over in Australia. Modestas Bukauskas does enough to win that fight 3 rounds to none on one card, and then 2 to 1 on the other 2 cards. I mean, this is for the most part, I think, going to be a stand-up fight. Bukauskas hasn't done much wrestling at all in his UFC career. I mean, I don't think he's done any wrestling so far. Pauga has not done any wrestling as well. You're going to see these two guys come in here, and you're going to see them try to strike. I mean, I think it's just a matter of if we're going to get a finish or not in this one. Pauga is a guy who, they talked about him, especially in the Ultimate Fighter, that he's not going to be the type of guy that's going to try to go out there and knock you out. He's going to be more of a decision guy. He's going to try to outpace you. And of course, at heavyweight, he was going to try to be quicker than his opponents and just beat him to the punch all the time. Obviously, at light heavyweight, that's not what he's going to be. He's a heavyweight coming down to light heavyweight, which means he does possess a little bit more power, but still, I would say even at 205 pounds, where this is where Pauga's, natural weight classes, he's not a knockout specialist. He's still going to be a guy that's going to try to outpoint you and still try to outstrike you from the outside. Same with Modestas Bukauskas, but Bukauskas, I would say, a lot more of a knockout threat than what Zach Pauga is. So I think if you're going to see a knockout, it's likely going to be on the side of Bukauskas, but even in a decision, I would say Bukauskas and Pauga, you could see it either way for each guy. And that's where I'm going to go decision for Bukauskas here. I think I do like the power, obviously, between him and Zach Pauga, but I just think all around as a fighter, Modestas Bukauskas is the way better striker. He's a lot more experienced. He's seen more in the octagon. He's been around for longer, and it's just, I think that's where this one comes down to. This will be Bukauskas' 20th professional fight. For Pauga, this is only going to be his 8th. I think it's a huge difference in terms of experience, and that's where Bukauskas is going to get Pauga in this fight. Giving Modestas Bukauskas to come back. He's going to go 2-0 in his second run in the UFC. I'll take him by unanimous decision over Zach Pauga. Next up, we've got Dan Argueta taking on Ronnie Lawrence. I remember when Ronnie Lawrence had a lot of hype around him. I mean, this is a guy who was coming in as a favorite in his last fight over a year ago, or about a year ago, against Salikhov Karamov. And Salikhov Karamov, surprisingly, a guy who was cut from the UFC after starting 1-1, starting 2-1 in the UFC, gets cut from the promotion. Obviously, he's gone on to ex-MMA in his last fight. He won that fight pretty decisively over Rafael Costa by head and arm choke in 55 seconds. It just kind of goes to show why is this guy outside the UFC. I'm just saying I like to see Karamov in the PFL. I think they're saying a lot of former UFC guys. And again, I think he can have an Impa Kasanganay type run over there, as you see Impa's now in the playoffs. I think Salikhov Karamov, you get him for the PFL season next year. I think that'd be really cool to have him in the featherweight division, just considering there's a lot of good featherweights. And Movli Habibov, you've got, Bubba Jenkins, Brendan Lofnano's eliminated, but still, you got guys in the featherweight division that can really be good matchups for Salikhov Karamov. Even like a Gabriel Braga or even a Jesus Pinedo who just knocked out Lofnano in his last fight. Hell, they still got Chris Wade in that division too. The featherweight division is really good for the PFL. Anyways, Ronnie Lawrence loses to Salikhov Karamov in his last fight. And it's interesting because, again, Karamov's now out of the UFC. But for Lawrence in that fight, he just gets dominated. Karamov out-wrestles him for 13 minutes in that fight. And Ronnie Lawrence is usually known as the guy who goes up there and out-wrestles his opponents. You look at his first fight, or at least his fight on the Contender Series, 12 takedowns against Jose Johnson, 10 minutes of control time. The Vince Cachero fight, 8 minutes of control time. He finishes in the third round, but 8 takedowns as well. The Mana Martinez fight, 6 takedowns, 8 minutes of control. That's what Ronnie Lawrence does to guys. And then Saijakub Karamov came in there in his UFC debut and dominated him on the ground. Sorry, his second fight in the UFC, but dominated him on the ground. Karamov was good in the UFC, and again, Ronnie Lawrence has not fought since. He'll now get a guy in Dan Argueta, obviously, who fought in the Ultimate Fighter season 29, where he lost Ricky Tercios in the first round, came back to LFA, won 3 straight fights over there, won the LFA Bantamweight Championship, then came into the UFC on short notice, got a fight against Damon Jackson, which he lost by unanimous decision, and then beat Nick Aguirre in his last fight on that Strickland Imavov card, just dominates Aguirre on the ground. And that's the big question for this fight. Who is the better wrestler between Lawrence and Argueta? Because that's really what I think is going to determine the winner of this fight. I mean, you saw the Damon Jackson-Dan Argueta fight too, and that was a fight that, that was the question too in that fight. Between Argueta and Damon Jackson, the better wrestler is going to win. And obviously, again, that was Argueta on short notice, and that was, again, Damon Jackson being a minus 500 favorite. But still, whoever the better wrestler we thought in going into that fight was going to win. And I feel like the same exact thing is coming up for this fight between Argueta and Ronnie Lawrence. I've seen Ronnie Lawrence get out wrestled. I've seen Dan Argueta both get out wrestled in the UFC. Again, Karamov did it to Lawrence, and Jackson did it to Argueta. We will see how this fight will go. I think no matter what, someone's going to prove that they're the better wrestler, and someone's going to prove they're the better grappler. I think it's going to be Ronnie Lawrence. I'm going to take Lawrence to win. I'm not confident at all in the pick, but I'll take Ronnie Lawrence to get back in the win column. I like him to beat Dan Argueta by unanimous decision. Next up, we've got Teresa Bleda taking on Gabriela Fernandes for Bleda, still 21 years old. I mean, again, only one fight so far in the UFC. It was the loss to Natalia Silva. Silva spinning back kicks her in the face, and for Natalia Silva, really good fighter, I think. I mean, she's 3-0 so far in the UFC. We'll see what Silva will get next. Obviously, in her last fight, beating Victoria Leonardo by knockout in the first round. That's what we thought that fight was going to be. We'll see what we get out of Silva next. But for now, her last fight in Bleda's case was Silva, and Bleda gets knocked out in the third round with a spinning back kick. She won in the Contender Series before that, and what Bleda's trying to do, for the most part, she'll just try to go out there and she'll try to out-judo you, try to wrestle you, basically. She is a fighter coming from the Czech Republic. Really good ground fighter. That's where she always wants to take the fight. For Gabriela Fernandes, so far in the UFC, 0-1. Her first fight, losing to Jasmine Jazavidius, and that fight, she got dominated on the ground. She got 30-26 in her first fight in the UFC on that Muniz and Brendan Allen card. Again, it was just a dominant wrestling performance at Jasmine Jazavidius. And now Jazavidius in her last fight, just went out and beat Miranda Maverick in Vancouver. But at the time, I mean, still, I think Jazavidius was favorited to win that fight. Actually, no, Fernandes was the favorite to win that fight. Actually, going back at it, we picked Fernandes to win that one. We'll see her again here, but again, Fernandes was, we thought going into that fight, okay, if Jazavidius takes her down, we like Fernandes on the ground. We like to see what she can do in terms of transitions, if she can get that fight, in top position for her. Obviously, that didn't happen that way. And I think in this one, Teresa Bleda is a huge favorite. She's a minus 275 favorite over the plus 220 underdog in Gabriela Fernandes. And I think people are looking at this fight, and this is how I'm looking at it as well. I think Bleda's just going to take her down. I think Bleda's going to do the same exact thing that Jazavidius did to her. I mean, again, she got 30-26 in her UFC debut, did Fernandes. I know Bleda got finished in her first fight, but still, if Bleda's just able to go in there and take her down and hold her down, I think it's going to be an easy night in the office for her. And then in the Natalia Silva fight, again, Bleda did have some success on the ground. She did have about 5 minutes of control. I know that's not what she wanted to do in that fight, and she was likely down 2-0 going into the third, but still, she showed the capability of getting the takedown. She showed the capability of getting the fight down to the ground. Something that I don't know if Gabriela Fernandes can do. Again, Fernandes so far in the UFC just looked horrible in her first fight. Given I know Jazavidius is a tough entry-level UFC fight, and I know Fernandes was coming into the UFC as the interim LFA flyweight champion, but still, you just got to question the level of competition that she had before the UFC. Again, even in her LFA title fight win, she beat the fighter in Caroline Martins, who had not fought in LFA before, who's coming off a win over 10-8-1 fighter, who, again, you look at just the fighters that Gabriela Fernandes beat, you don't know basically who they are and their level, how good they truly are. So I think Bleda goes in there. I think she just goes out there and out wrestles her. I'll take her by unanimous decision. Again, I just think it's going to be a dominant wrestling performance. Teresa Bleda is going to win by unanimous decision. Next up in the flyweight division, we have got Felipe Bunes taking on Zhumagulov. And for Zhumagulov back in the UFC, again, we talked about it slightly when he was supposed to fight Rafael Estevam at UFC 288 in Newark, New Jersey. Obviously, that fight didn't happen because his opponent could not make weight. Zhumagulov is back. He'll be fighting here on this undercard against Felipe Bunes, but we'll talk about it again slightly with Zhumagulov. So far in the UFC run, he's 1-5. Yeah, he's 1-5. He fights Halian Paiva in his first fight, loses by unanimous decision. It's fine. Paiva was a ranked fighter at the time. It was a somewhat close fight. Zhumagulov holds his own, technically outstrikes Halian Paiva in that fight. You can make the case Zhumagulov beats Halian Paiva in that fight. His next fight's Amir Albazi. Okay, he loses. Amir Albazi's a guy who now has put himself in the top 5 of the weight class, just beat Kai Kara-France in a main event. Given, did he really beat Kai Kara-France? I don't think so, but it's fine. Beats Jerome Rivera after that, submits him in the first round, but everyone who was beating Jerome Rivera at that point runs into Manel Kopp. Manel Kopp's a top 5 guy. Kopp knocks him out in the first round. Loses a split decision against Jeff Molina that nobody thought he lost. Everyone thought Zhumagulov won that fight. Even Jeff Molina thought Zhumagulov won that fight. And then he runs into Charles Johnson after that, a fight where a lot of people thought Zhumagulov won, and they gave the decision to Charles Johnson. I thought Zhumagulov won the fight as well. I had winning rounds 1 and 2, and they gave the fight to Charles Johnson. So Zhumagulov was on the end of a lot of bad decisions. He then retires after the Charles Johnson fight because he just didn't want to put up with this crap anymore. But now he's back. He's giving it one more shot. Basically, he has to win this fight to stay in the UFC against Felipe Bunes. I know the UFC sees it too, that, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. This guy has been on the wrong end of a lot of decisions, and he's been in a lot of close fights against some top guys. Okay, but he gives Felipe Bunes here. And for Felipe, 2-fight winning streak coming in LFA. I think he's most notable maybe for being the LFA flyweight champion, but I think honestly, this is where I remember him from. He was the guy who lost to Jussier Formiga's first fight outside of the UFC. Now, Formiga has not been seen since. I know he missed weight for that fight. It was at bantamweight. He weighs in at 139 pounds for that fight. He does go in there and he beats Felipe Bunes. He submits him in the second round. But again, Formiga is kind of washed at this point, let's just be honest. And he does go in there and does beat Bunes. But Bunes since then has had 2 fights. He wins back-to-back fights, and he becomes the LFA flyweight champion. Now, this is a guy, though, who fought in ACA, who fought in Russia, and you know the type of fights you can get in over there. You can get some really good opponents, and that's what Bunes kind of did. He goes in there, he loses 3 straight fights in ACA, but against guys who are 7-0, 8-0, and 10-1, again, you just don't know what to think of this, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not all that familiar with Russian MMA. I don't watch ACA that much. I really don't, I'll be honest with you. It's just I don't know what to make of this because I don't know how good these guys truly are. Again, he is 2-1 in LFA, the one loss being Jussier Formiga. We'll see. Bunes has shown that he has a really good ground game. Obviously, I know he did lose to Formiga, but Bunes also has got power on the feet that does translate into that ground game as well. It's tough. This is a tough one for me to call. It really is because, yes, Zhumagulov is good, but Bunes is pretty good as well. I think it's a really close fight. Again, Zhumagulov isn't great, but he just gets in a lot of close fights that he barely loses. And I think if he's going to want to win this fight, he's going to have to keep it on the feet. I think that's what he's going to do. I will ever so slightly, and I'm not confident at all, ever so slightly, I'll take Zhumagulov to win this fight by a decision. I think he's able to keep the fight on the feet, and I think he's able to outstrike Bunes. But, man, it is not a confident pick at all. Okay, next up, we have got Carlos Hernandez taking on Dennis Bondar here. I think the fight is kind of simple. If Hernandez keeps the fight on the feet, he wins. Bondar, you know, he wants to get the fight down. That's where he specializes in. This is a guy who is a primary wrestler, who's a really good grappler. That's where he wants to fight. Fighting out the Ukraine, he's going to be taking on Carlos Hernandez, a guy who is 1-1 in the UFC, his first fight, winning a split decision against Victor Altamirano. I thought Altamirano won the fight, if I'm being honest with you. And Altamirano since then has fought 3 times, beating Daniel Lacerda, beating Vinicius Salvador, and losing to Tim Elliott most recently. But Hernandez bounces back. He fights Alan Nascimento about a year later, and Nascimento goes in there and submits him in the first round. So what do we get here? Because again, Nascimento is a good grappler, really good jiu-jitsu guy. He came in there, got the submission against Hernandez pretty quickly, was able to get an easy takedown in the first round, 2 easy takedowns in the first round. He was able to get the submission that way. Again, that's kind of the game plan Dennis Bondar is going to have. I was not impressed with Dennis Bondar in his first fight in the UFC. Obviously, he has the arm injury a minute in, but we just haven't seen much out of him. He's been scheduled for 4 fights. Other than the Malcolm Gordon fight, he's booked twice against Ode Osborne, again against Malcolm Gordon before the actual Gordon fight happened, and then Victor Rodriguez as well. He's only made the walk once for that Malcolm X Gordon fight. And as someone who is a huge Ode Osborne guy, I'm a huge fan of Ode Osborne. I was still hoping that Osborne was going to get the Dennis Bondar fight, considering I think that was going to be an easy win for the Picasso of MMA in Osborne. Now Picasso is going to have to fight Asu Alamabeyev or whatever, some Kazakhstani guy who... We'll get to that fight when we get to it, I believe, in August. But man, I don't know. I'm a big Picasso Ode Osborne guy. If you don't know the Picasso reference, I'll explain it later when Osborne fights in August. But if you watch the channel, you know how much I like Ode Osborne. Anyways, for Dennis Bondar, again, The one fight in the UFC goes 82 seconds. He's now getting Carlos Hernandez. What I can tell you, though, is Denis Bondar is going to go to the legs immediately. Denis Bondar is going to try to take down Carlos Hernandez right away because that's his best pathway to victory. Because on the feet, I think he's going to get beat. I think Hernandez is the better striker. Now, Hernandez, again, does not possess a knockout finish ever in his career. He's probably not going to get it here either. If he's going to win, it's going to be by outstriking Denis Bondar for 15 minutes. I think, again, for Hernandez, he's going to have to fight off the legs a lot. Bondar is going to shoot for the legs a lot. Bondar is going to try to wrestle with him a lot in this fight. If Hernandez can tire him out, if Hernandez can just put a beating on him, I think he's going to slow Bondar down, and Bondar's, output's going to slow down incredibly as well. And I think Hernandez is going to go on to win this fight. I think, again, at minus 135, I would not lay money on it, but I think Hernandez is, again, the better fighter. I think Hernandez is a better striking game, and I think that is going to be able to keep him standing as well. I don't think he's going to end up on the mat that often, and if he can stay off the mat, Hernandez should win. Give me Carlos Hernandez to win this fight. He's going to get it done by unanimous decision. Okay, so this is good. Kang taking on Christian Quinonez. This is a good fight. I really think it is. For Kang, 7-3 in the UFC. His last fight being the win over Danaa Bakary in Singapore. Yes, that was over a year ago on the Teixeira Prochazka card. He beats Danaa Bakary by unanimous decision. He looks good. He really does. It's a back and forth fight. Now for Danaa Bakary, this is a guy who at one point I was really high on, and then he just lost to Brady Heaston in his last fight, and he's likely out of the UFC now. But anyways, Kang goes in there and beats Danaa Bakary by unanimous decision. It's a back and forth, really good fight on the feet. I thought Danaa Bakary kind of won, though. Honestly, I thought Bakary should have got the decision. But again, it's back and forth. I'm not going to argue that much with it. I think it's just a really close fight that Kang does win. Now, before that, he drops a fight to Hani Yahya. Yahya beats him by unanimous decision. It's a fight that Kang does knock down Yahya in the first round, but Yahya comes back, wins the last 2 rounds, just out-grapples him, just holds Kang down, and Yahya picks up the victory. Now, Hani Yahya has not fought since that. Oh, we know he fought. I forgot Montel Jackson. He fought that fight. I still kind of want to see him against Cody Garbrandt. I think that'd be funny. Anyways, I think Garbrandt would probably win, considering he just out-wrestled Trevin Jones in his last fight. All right, anyways, considering for Kang, though, going back to him, 3-fight winning streak before the Yahya fight, winning over Ishihara where he submits him in the first round, a Brandon Davis split decision win, and a win by split decision against Pyongyang Liu in late 2019. I believe that was in Busan. Kang's good. He's a good striker, as you saw in the Danaa Bakary fight. He's able to hang with a guy like Danaa Bakary. He's better on the ground, though, I would say. Even though, again, I know he got out-grappled by Hani Yahya, but in this fight like this, his ground game is gonna be what's gonna win him the fight if he's gonna win. Because Christian Quinonez is a really good striker. This is a guy who goes for it on the feet. Quinonez is going to try to knock you out with every single punch he throws. You saw the Khalid Taha fight back in Paris on the Gan Tuivasa card. Quinonez goes in there for the finish. He goes in there for the kill. Quinonez is going to blitz you. Quinonez is going to try to stop you in there. And to a certain extent, again, for Kang, if he fights the style of fight with Quinonez, I think he's going to get knocked out. So for Kang, he's going to have to wrestle Christian Quinonez in this fight. But it's not like, again, I don't think Quinonez is horrible on the ground. I think he can hold his own. I think he can stuff a takedown. But I think, again, if Kang is going to have his best pathway to victory, it's going to be through the wrestling. Because, again, Quinonez is going to come out for the finish. Quinonez is going to try to knock him out with every single punch he's going to throw. And I think to a certain extent, that's what we're going to see here. I think Quinonez is going to get the finish. I don't think I've picked a finish so far. It took me 18 minutes to predict a finish on this card. I think this is where you're going to finally get it. I think Quinonez, again, is going to string together back-to-back knockout victories and back-to-back first-round knockout victories, as I think he gets the first-round finish against Kang. Again, I just really like the power out of Quinonez. I think he's going to blitz Kang early. I think he's going to put him in a tough spot. I don't think Quinonez is going to allow himself to get taken down, and I think he's going to go in there. I think he's going to knock out Kang. So give me Christian Quinonez to win this fight. He's going to get it done by first-round knockout. So many lower weight cards on this fight. I mean, another fight at 125 pounds. I believe the fourth if you count the women's fight. A lot of flyweight fights. Anyways, Jimmy Flick taking on Alessandro Costa in this fight. For Jimmy Flick, he comes back out of retirement. A lot of people thought it was just because he needed money, which it doesn't surprise me. Just because, I mean, again, he did not fight for 2 years, and I don't know what Jimmy Flick was doing, but he comes back. He's got a fight against Charles Johnson. It was interesting in terms of, I believe, the odds, because I believe that week the odds started at like even for both guys, and then by the end of the week, Charles Johnson had progressed to a minus 300 favorite, and Jimmy Flick was at plus 275, and the fight wasn't close. Charles Johnson knocks him out in the first round. It wasn't really a fight, and again, Flick had a lot of hype, I think, even going into that fight until basically fight week where everyone all of a sudden was just down on Jimmy Flick. I don't know if it was because I believe it was something that he said in an interview. But yeah, he just gets dominated in that one. It's just he couldn't get anything going. It was just one-way traffic for Charles Johnson. Remember, I bet on Charles Johnson, I believe, to go over on significant strikes by like 23 in that one. It was a weird prop bet, but I remember I won with it. But yeah, Johnson goes in there and beats Jimmy Flick. And Flick was a guy before that who had all the hype because I would say the flying triangle choke, or the flying triangle choke against Cody Durden. That was his only fight in the UFC up until that point. Given, again, Flick is not a good striker. Flick is going to be a guy who's going to try to out-wrestle you. And he went in there and tried to out-grapple Durden, and he did. He caught him with the submission, and he, again, picks up the submission victory. It's just that Flick is not good on the feet. Jimmy Flick is just a wrestler, just a grappler. He is not good at anything other than jiu-jitsu, really. Because Alessandro Costa is going to have a huge advantage on the feet. Again, this is a guy who does have good submission skills as well, but in his only fight in the UFC, I know it was a loss. It was a fight against now top 5 guy Amir Albazi on short notice. Albazi goes in there and finishes him in the third round. Third round. It's what you expect is going to happen, though. He got out grappled. He got out struck. The first round, though, Alessandro Costa debatably wins that first round against Amir Albazi. It's just in the second and the third, that's where Albazi starts to take over. For Costa, though, way more power than Jimmy Flick, way better hands than Jimmy Flick. He's going to go in there. I think he's going to knock out Jimmy Flick in the first round. I don't think Flick's going to be able to get much going here because, again, Costa isn't a horrible ground guy either. He is able to hold his own on the ground as well. So as long as he's able to keep the fight standing and he's able to stay out the traps that Flick is going to set on the ground, Alessandro Costa is going to be able to win this fight, and I think he's going to be able to win it pretty convincingly. I think it's going to be a huge win for him, similar to what the Jimmy Flick fight was for Charles Johnson. It was a huge catapult for Charles Johnson, getting a huge first-round finish. I think it's going to be the same way for Alessandro Costa. I think it's going to be a huge first-round finish. I think he's going to come in there. I think he's going to immediately get to Jimmy Flick. Flick's going to try to wrestle, but Costa's not going to let it happen, and Alessandro Costa is going to go in there and knock out Jimmy Flick in the first round. It's going to be the minus 250 favorite in Alessandro Costa to win by first-round knockout. Okay, Honey Barcelos versus Miles Johns. I'll just say it right now. I think Honey Barcelos is going to win this fight. This is going to help me get my point across. I think he's going to. I think. It's very close for me. I just don't like the odds for this fight. Why is Barcelos at minus 225 and Miles Johns at plus 190? I think this fight's a lot closer than that. I really think it is. I think you should be looking at more like minus 150 type odds for Barcelos. I know Barcelos has been fighting the top guys, and maybe that's, well, not top guys, but he's been fighting the borderline top 15 guys. And for Miles Johns, he's been fighting the entry-level guys in the UFC. But Miles Johns has power. He's got pop in his strikes. He's 4-2 in the UFC, again, against guys who are not in the same level of competition that Honey Barcelos has been seeing. But you look at Miles Johns, his last fight's a win over Vince Morales by unanimous decision. It's a loss to John Castaneda by arm triangle choke in the third round, a knockout win over Anderson Dos Santos in the third, a knockout win in the third round against Kevin Natividad, a loss to Mario Bautista, and then a win over Colt Smith in his UFC debut. I know it's not, again, on the level of what Barcelos has seen, because Barcelos, you look at his last fights, Said Nurmagomedov, Khalid Taha, Timur Valiev, Victor Henry, Trevin Jones, Umar Nurmagomedov. Sure, those are tough fights. But in that stretch, he's only, 3-2? 3-3? Just saying. I know, again, the guys he's lost to are good guys. Umar Nurmagomedov, this is a guy who's undefeated. Nurmagomedov, we'll see where he goes next. The rumor is he's going to be fighting Corey Sandhagen. Sure, I'm down for that. Barcelos before that beats Trevin Jones, but he's supposed to beat Trevin Jones. The Victor Henry fight, at the time, Barcelos was a big favorite, and we're thinking, okay, I understand why Victor Henry beat him. Victor Henry's a pretty good striker, and then he goes in and loses to Rafael Assunção after that. I know Henry did come back and beat Tony Gravely in his last fight, so maybe we're okay with that, but at the time, it was just an interesting decision, and especially didn't age incredibly well with Henry losing to Assunção, considering Assunção's 42, and I don't know. Again, Rafael Assunção lost to Davey Grant in his last one, but man, I just don't know what to make of that. And then Barcelos loses to Timur Valiev by majority decision. That was a fight of the night, good fight. Valiev's not in the UFC anymore. This is a guy that they're making fight in the Ultimate Fighter, even though he went 2-1 in the UFC. Why? I don't know. I thought he was going to go back to the PFL, but yeah, I'm assuming, again, I haven't talked much about the Ultimate Fighter season. I'm assuming Timur Valiev is going to win. I think Valiev is the best guy that they've got at 135 pounds in that thing. And then I don't know who's going to win the other weight class. I'll be honest with you. I can't even think of the other weight class at the current moment. But yeah, I think Valiev is going to win 135. Oh yes, and the other weight class is lightweight. Honestly, I'd probably take Roosevelt Roberts. Honestly, I think Roberts he looked good in his first fight where he beat, Who did he beat? Jennerman, I think. He looked good in that fight. Quick knockout. We'll see. I think Connor's team's going to lose every single fight, though. I don't think they should have done prospects versus vets because I think the vets are going to win every single fight. So I think Chandler, honestly, is going to win every single fight, and you get to the second round. And I think Connor's going to be lucky to have anybody still left in that thing. I mean, again, I know there's some not as good veterans in that, but yeah, I don't really think Connor's team's going to win all that much. Because there's really just not many guys that are that good that Connor's got. I mean, I know, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe Jason Knight loses, maybe Kurt Hollowball loses, Austin Hubbard, I don't know. But especially at bantamweight, man, Chandler's team's so much better. That is a bloodbath up there. I mean, 135 is tough. Valiev, you've got Hunter Azure, you've got some really tough guys at 135. Going back to this prediction, though, I'm going to take Honey Barcelos by decision. It's just that, again, I think Johns has got a better shot than people are giving him, but in a pure stand-up fight, yes, I do agree. Okay, I think Barcelos is better than Miles Johnson. If he can stay out the way of the power. I mean, obviously, Umar knocked him out in his last fight. Miles Johnson's not Umar Nurmagomedov, so I think Barcelos is able to stay out the way of that. Obviously, this fight will probably not hit the mat because both these guys are known for their defensive wrestling, so why would either guy go for a takedown? I think Barcelos, again, is able to keep this fight. I think he's able to, keep distance in this fight. I think he's able to stay away from danger that Miles Johnson's going to throw, and I will take Honey Barcelos to win this fight by decision. I think he's just a better striker, but I don't like these odds incredibly. I don't really like these odds because, again, I think there's a chance Miles Johns can land a big shot and put him down, but I'm going to take Honey Barcelos to win this one. I like him to win by unanimous decision. Starting off the main card, we have got Nicholas Dalby taking on Muslim Salikhov. For the King of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikhov, winning his last fight against Andrea Fiallo, knocking him out with the spinning back kick in the third round. Before that, he had the fight against Li Jingliang where he gets knocked out in the second round. And that was a really good win for the Leech over on Long Island. Before that, for Salikhov, huge winning streak in the UFC. That was his first loss since 2017 in the promotion. In his first fight, he was on a big 5-fight winning streak in the UFC. Then he runs into Li Jingliang and he gets knocked out. Now, Salikhov is getting up there in age. He is 39, but his opponent in this fight, Nicholas Dalby, is getting up there as well. He's 38. So two older guys coming into this one. For Dalby, the second run in the UFC has been pretty solid. I mean, if you take away the fight against Jesse Ronson, which now is considered a no contest because Ronson popped, I believe it was for marijuana, I think, I'm not sure. Ronson's last fight in the UFC is against a guy we're going to talk about in the co-main event, in Joaquim Silva, but Ronson actually, since leaving the UFC, is 3-0. Anyways, Ronson goes in there and beats Dalby. It was a fight that, I mean, my goodness, everyone was high on Dalby. I wouldn't say high, but like, everyone thought Dalby was going to win this fight, and Ronson at plus 400 goes in there and submits him. We're like, what the? I mean, it was just crazy. But then Dalby comes back and beats Daniel Rodriguez. He's a huge underdog. He beats Rodriguez, loses to Tim Means, beats Claudio Silva, and then beats Warley Alves in his last fight. Now, Dalby goes in there and outstrikes Alves for 15 minutes in his last one at UFC 283 Teixeira versus Hill. He wins it by split decision. The thing about that fight is, and I will remain constant about Dalby is, yes, Dalby can go out there, he can strike, he can get into back and forth striking fights with a guy like Warley Alves, even Tim Means, Daniel Rodriguez, even though I thought D-Rod beat Dalby. Anyways, I guess Muslim Salikhov, he can't do that. Salikhov's going to knock him out if he stands right in front of Muslim Salikhov. Salikhov is too good to stay there striking at range with Nicholas Dalby because he's going to go in there and he's going to knock Dalby out. So what does Dalby have to do? Likely he has to go for a takedown, right? I mean, I think, but Dalby hasn't done that too often recently, but if he tries, okay, Salikhov, really good defensive wrestler. No one really takes down at Muslim Salikhov, so then you're stuck going, okay, well, Dalby then will have to strike likely. I don't like a striking fight in this one for Dalby and Salikhov. If Dalby's going to win, it will likely be he'll have to get in Salikhov's face, he'll have to push the pace. Again, he'll just have to get in his face and throw stuff out there, so Salikhov can't wing out his big power shots. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Salikhov will keep distance. I think he'll use his kicks really well in this fight. And if Salikhov can use his kicks, he can set up the rest of his strikes. I think it's just going to make it really hard on Nicholas Dalby to win. Because again, if Salikhov's putting it all together, again, that Kung Fu style, Dalby's really going to get messed up on the feet, and I think Salikhov's going to find a way to get a finish. So give me a second round knockout finish for Muslim Salikhov at minus 190. I'd like him to pick up his 7th win in the UFC with this fight. Again, I think he'll eventually finish Dalby, so give me Muslim Salikhov to win this fight. He'll get it done again by second round TKO over Nicholas Dalby. Next up, we've got Manuel Torres taking on Nicholas Motta. Should be a good fight here, contested at 155 pounds. For Nicholas Motta, 1-1 in the UFC. He comes into the UFC after winning in the Contender Series against Joseph Lowry. Wins that fight by unanimous decision. It's a fight that's close, but a back and forth win for Motta. Then he goes on, he loses to Jim Miller, he gets knocked out in the second round, and that's kind of what Jim Miller's been doing recently. He's just been beating guys who are new to the promotion, and he just knocks them out. Eric Gonzalez, Nicholas Motta, Jesse Butler. I mean, where do they find Jesse Butler? Jesse Butler gets knocked out in 23 seconds by Jim Miller. Again, keep Jim Miller going in the UFC. He is a Hall of Famer. I don't know what I am against what Daniel Cormier said about Jim Miller. I think Jim Miller should be in the Hall of Fame. If Cowboy's in the Hall of Fame, Jim Miller's in the Hall of Fame as well. Anyways, Nicholas Motta has his first fight against Jim Miller, which is such a tough first UFC fight. He gets knocked out in the second round, and then he runs into Cameron Van Camp. He beats Cameron Van Camp by knockout in the first round. I was surprised that Jim Miller didn't get Cameron Van Camp. Van Camp now outside the UFC after 2 fights to Andre Fiallo and Nicholas Motta, but Motta goes in there and knocks him out in the first round. Nicholas Motta, again, has shown power. He is a good striker, a decent striker, who has got a lot of power. He can go in there and try to finish fights. He'll be taking on Manuel Torres, who is a long, lanky fighter for the weight class. He's going to try to use his reach advantage in this fight, which I think is only 3 inches in this one, but still, Torres feels like a really big fighter at lightweight, and he is going to go for it. Manuel Torres is a fighter who is going to go in for the kill. He is going to try to finish you. Similar to what we talked about with Christian Quinonez, Manuel Torres is that type of guy as well. You look at the Frank Camacho fight. Again, that was back in May of 2022, but he goes for it against Camacho, and he knocks him out in the first round. His fight in the Contender Series against Colton England back in 2021, he goes out there for the finish. He gets it in the first round, gets the contract with it. That's what Torres is going to do. Torres is going in there for the kill at every single moment. And he's an exciting fighter. He really is. It's going to make for a really fun fight between him and Nicholas Motta because both these guys should go for it on the feet. Both these guys are going to trade. They both have power. I think Torres has more power than Motta does, but I think it's just a really good fight. I think as a whole, I think Torres is the better striker. I think Torres is quicker, and I think Torres will be able to get to the punch quicker than Motta does. I think, again, he's got more power than what Nicholas Motta has. I would be concerned about a knockout either way, but I like Torres just a little bit more. I think Torres is a better striker. He's coming into this fight at -165, Motta at +140. You look at the Tapology odds, well, you know, a lot of people siding with Manuel Torres. He's an 85-15 favorite on Tapology over Torres. I'm going to side with the 85%. I think Torres will get the win, and I think he will blitz Motta early, and I think, again, it will create for a really incredible finish early because both guys are going to go for it, but I think that finish will go to Manuel Torres. Give me Torres to beat Nicholas Motta. He's going to get it done by first round knockout. Very interesting striker versus grappler matchup here between Pat Sabatini and Lucas Almeida. It's a really good fight because Pat Sabatini is a guy who was undefeated in the UFC until his last one against Damon Jackson, where Damon Jackson came in there and, you know, immediately gets that fight down, finishes Pat Sabatini with strikes on the ground after the takedown that Damon Jackson does get. Jackson wins the fight early in that Santagan versus Song Yadong card. That was back in the fall of last year. It was a fight that Sabatini was a huge favorite in, but he does drop the fight. And again, Sabatini was a guy who was, you know, looking really good in the UFC. Tristan Connolly fight, he dominates him. Jamal Emmers catches him in a heel hook in the first round. He beats Tucker Lutz before that by unanimous decision, where he dominates him on the ground. And he dominates TJ Laramie on the ground for a decision win as well. And then he gets Damon Jackson, and he gets finished in the first. For Lucas Almeida, this is a guy who just hasn't been able to find a fight in the UFC. He fights Mike Trizano in his first fight, a really good victory for Almeida. He outstrikes Trizano, he drops him twice. It's a really good back and forth fight in that one. After dropping the first, Almeida comes back and wins the second and the third, and eventually gets the finish in the third round. And Almeida wins, obviously, but you know, this is a guy who has not found a fight since. He's been booked against Zubair Tuhugov. Tuhugov botches his weight cut. Andre Fili is booked against. Fili has an injury. He was booked against Hakeem Dawodu last week, but Dawodu has to withdraw. So now they get him Pat Sabatini on short notice. And I think that favors Almeida a lot as well. Again, you get a guy in Sabatini who is coming to this fight on short notice as of about a couple weeks, I think, because it got pushed back, obviously, from the Canada card and the Vancouver card to this. And now, again, you get Almeida, a guy who's a really good striker. I know he ran into Daniel Zellhuber on the Contender Series where he lost by decision. It's a good back and forth fight that Zellhuber does win, and that's the fight that you would say is a little bit concerning for Almeida. But Zellhuber's a guy who, again, is 1-1 in the UFC. Dropped his first win to Trey Ogden in a fight that he's a huge favorite in, but he lost. But then he beat Lando Venata in his next fight. But Almeida and Sabatini, this fight's completely up to if Almeida can keep this fight standing. If he can't keep it standing, okay, he's gonna lose. If he can keep it on the feet, man, it's gonna be all Almeida in this fight. Because I think a lot of people are seeing this fight as Sabatini takes his fight down, he gets a submission. Almeida keeps his striking, he gets a knockout. I know Almeida can get it done to the ground as well. He's not a bad grappler, but compared to Pat Sabatini, a guy that specializes in that ground game, okay, Almeida's not going to be able to hang with him on the ground. But on the feet, again, same can be said. Sabatini's not going to be able to stay on the feet with Lucas Almeida because Almeida is that good striking wise. I'm going to take the underdog in this fight. I'm going to take the plus 150 underdog here from Brazil. I'm going to take Lucas Almeida to win the fight. I think Almeida, again, is able to keep this fight striking, and I don't even know if Pat Sabatini is going to be able to get this fight down. I think it's going to be a quick fight. I think Almeida immediately is going to go in there. He's going to blitz Sabatini, and he's going to knock him out. Give me Lucas Almeida to win this fight. I think he'll get it done by first-round knockout. Again, I think Pat Sabatini is not able to wrestle enough, and Almeida is able to find that finish. Almeida is able to show his power and knock out Pat Sabatini. So give me Lucas Almeida to win this one. I like him to get it done by first-round knockout. So now we've got the second UFC fight for Christian Leroy Duncan. He'll be taking on Arman Petrosyan here. And for CLD, Christian Leroy Duncan, his first fight in the promotion is a win over Dusko Todorovic. At UFC 286, it is a knee injury to Todorovic, but still a victory for CLD. He'll now be taking on Arman Petrosyan in this one. And for Petrosyan, so far in the UFC, 2-1. First fight is a win over Gregory Rodriguez by split decision. It's a fight that, honestly, I didn't think he won, but he gets the victory over Rodriguez. Then he loses to Caio Borralho in a fight that Borralho just kind of grounds him and doesn't let Petrosyan do much. That's kind of what Borralho does in all of his fights. Even though he did get a finish against Michał Zolciejczuk, I'll give him credit for that one. And Petrosyan, after that, beats AJ Dobson by unanimous decision. What Petrosyan is going to do, he's going to try to go out there, he's going to try to walk you down, he is going to try to outstrike you. And now for CLD, Christian Leroy Duncan, he's going to have to get out that game that Petrosyan is going to try to always lure his opponents into. Again, Petrosyan is going to try to lure you into kind of a slower striking fight. And for Duncan, he's going to have to try to pick up the pace and really try to start to get aggressive with Petrosyan. Because is he going to be able to win a 3-round decision against Petrosyan? Maybe. But I think for Christian Leroy Duncan, his best pathway to victory is by getting a knockout and getting a knockout early. He's going to have to try to get something going quickly against Petrosyan here because that's where he has the best way of winning this fight. Petrosyan, I would say, gets better as the fight goes. He's a guy who can, again, settle into a fight, start getting the striking going, and really wear on you as the fight progresses. For Duncan, he's more of a guy that's going to try to get you up on out of there quickly in the fight. And that's where I'm going to pick in this fight. I think Christian Leroy Duncan is able to showcase the power, and he is able to knock out Armenia Zone and Arman Petrosyan early in this fight. Again, he's an aggressive style of fighter. I think he's able to get that. Again, I think the power will be too much for Petrosyan, and I think Petrosyan, as a whole, is a good striker in his own right. This is a guy, again, who we've seen go in there. He's been able to outstrike RoboCop and Gregory Rodriguez, AJ Dobson in his last fight, sure. But I think this is a tougher style of fight for him and Christian Leroy Duncan, just considering the power that Leroy Duncan possesses. And yes, Leroy Duncan is going to be faster than Petrosyan as well. Petrosyan will remain constant in his pursuit of, again, just hitting you with stiff jabs and hitting you with stiff shots. But Duncan, again, is going to wing out big power shots, which I think is going to be tough for Arman Petrosyan to get away from. And I think CLD and Christian Leroy Duncan, again, will stay in Petrosyan's face, just like how Petrosyan is going to stay in Duncan's face as well. But I think if Petrosyan, again, remains striking with Leroy Duncan and can't get this fight into the later rounds, Duncan will eventually get that finish early, and Christian Leroy Duncan will pick up his second finish in the UFC. I think this time, again, he'll get it another first-round finish, but this time with a big knockout win. I think he's going to knock out Arman Petrosyan in the first round. So give me the minus 150 favorite here in Christian Leroy Duncan to go to 2-0 in the UFC, taking down or finishing and knocking out the plus 125 dog in Arman Petrosyan. Christian Leroy Duncan wins this one. He'll get it done by first round knockout. Okay, co-main event time. Arman Tsarukyan taking on Joaquim Silva. I mean, what do you want me to say about this fight? Look at the odds. Look at him. Tsarukyan minus 1,000, Silva plus 625. There's a reason this fight is at these odds. There's a reason. Tsarukyan's going to win, and Arman Tsarukyan's going to pick up the win by first round knockout. He's 26 years old. He is still, again, a dangerous player at 155 pounds. He was booked against Neto Moicano. That was supposed to be on the card that ended up being Song Yadong versus Ricky Simone. That originally was supposed to be Tsarukyan versus Moicano. Moicano had to drop out due to injury. They could not find a replacement fighter for Tsarukyan. I remember at the time, it was rumored that maybe Tsarukyan would get Beneil Dariush at the pay-per-view. Didn't happen. Of course, Dariush then got Charles Oliveira. Boy, was I wrong about that fight. Oliveira goes in there and knocks out Dariush in the first round. It should be Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev 2 in Abu Dhabi later this year, hopefully. Anyways, For Tsarukyan, though, he was supposed to get Moicano. Now he gets Joaquim Silva instead. I mean, it's like, what are we doing? Moicano's a top 15 guy, but still, he was a guy that was lower in the rankings than Tsarukyan. Joaquim Silva, I mean, Tapology has Joaquim Silva, get this, as the number 62 lightweight in the world. That's crazy. Like, they have, I mean, what? Who do they have at 61? They have Tafik Musayev at 61, but Tafik Musayev just got knocked out by Alexander Shavli. They have Uros Medic above Joaquim Silva. They've got Otmana Zaitar. They've got Patricky Pitbull. They've got Ferziem. I mean, they've got some guys who, you know, I mean, man, yeah, and I understand why, because again, Silva, is he bad? No, but is he good? Not really. He's 5-3. He's lost 2 out of his last 3 fights. His last fight is the win over Jesse Ronson late in 2022, where he finishes Ronson, yes, but Jesse Ronson is not a UFC caliber guy. And then before that for Silva, he loses to Ricky Glenn in 37 seconds. He loses to Nasrat Haqparast by knockout in the second round. He beats Jared Gordon, but that's back at the UFC on Fox days. That's on Lee Quinta in Milwaukee. It's been so long. I mean, again, Silva, what does he show in this fight that he can beat Arman Tsarukyan? Nothing. His power, maybe, but Tsarukyan's got power too. Tsarukyan's got wrestling, he's got striking, he's got everything that is so much better than Joaquim Silva in this fight. This fight is so similar to me to the Christos Giagos fight, where they give Tsarukyan a guy in Giagos who he's a -850 favorite in. Again, he's a bigger favorite in this fight against Joaquim Silva than he was in that fight against Giagos back in 2021, but it reminds me of that. It's, again, why is Tsarukyan fighting these guys? He's just so much better than these guys. He beat Giagos in 2 minutes and 9 seconds. I will make the case that he knocks out Joaquim Silva in a shorter amount of time than 2 minutes and 9 seconds. Because again, Tsarukyan has gotten so much better than that, better than what he was in the Giagos fight. The Joel Alvarez fight he was really good in. He won. The Mateus Gamrot fight, you can make the case he beats Gamrot. Again, it was a close fight. I'm not mad at the Gamrot win. I thought maybe Tsarukyan should have got the decision. Damir Ismagulov, good win for him, for Tsarukyan again by decision. Now he gets Joaquim Silva. This is one-way traffic. It's not even close. It is, you know, this is going to be a murder. First round knockout for Arman Tsarukyan. Again, there's a reason he's at -1,000. It's very rare you see this, you know, this much of inflated odds in the UFC, because the UFC, again, is supposed to be the best promotion in the world where they don't make mismatches like this, like the PFL. But man, this seems like a PFL fight. This seems like, all right, we're getting Arman Tsarukyan the quick 6. We want him to get 6 points in the lightweight division and move on to the playoffs. It's exactly what this fight feels like, and it's, you know, this is all Arman Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan by first round knockout. He is going to blitz Joaquim Silva. Joaquim Silva is going to fold under both the pressure and the power that Arman Tsarukyan has, and Arman Tsarukyan is going to win this fight by first round knockout, and he will finally get back, I will say, into getting top 10 opponents. Hell, rebook him against Neto Moicano. I'm not against that idea, but for now, Arman Tsarukyan improves to 7-2 in the UFC with a first round knockout victory over Joaquim Silva. Okay, main event time. In the middleweight division, we have got Marvin Vettori taking on the Killer Gorilla, Jared Cannonier. I don't know why I said Cannonier like that, but anyways, Vettori versus Cannonier. I mean, we talked about some of the beginning, like, where does the winner of this fight go? Because you're looking at a middleweight division where the champions beat everybody. The former champion in Alex Pereira is going up to light heavyweight. So what do we do now? Because, okay, the winner of Gigas Du Plessis and Robert Whittaker will be fighting for the World Championship next. And sure, Du Plessis is probably, I didn't even think they should have made that fight. I thought they should have done Whittaker and Strickland, because Du Plessis is the fight that I think can sell the most pay-per-view. I think Du Plessis is the most compelling story. Even though, yes, is Du Plessis the best fighter? No, but he keeps on winning, and at least there's heat in that fight. There's heat between a fight between Du Plessis and Adesanya. Both those guys want that fight, and it would make for, I think, an entertaining fight. Considering, yeah, I think Adesanya would win, but I think that the build would be pretty exciting to it. Now, Du Plessis in all likeliness will lose to Robert Whittaker, and Robert Whittaker will get his 3rd crack at the championship against Israel Adesanya. Sure, but you know what that does? That sends Du Plessis back down the ladder, and Du Plessis, will he get a title shot after that? I don't know if he'll ever get a title shot. Okay, who else in the weight class? Jared Cannonier versus Marvin Vettori. They are, I would say, number 2 and number 3 in the weight class behind Robert Whittaker. Again, the winner of this fight, will they be fighting for a world championship next? Likely no. Who else do you have in the weight class? Sean Strickland. All right, he lost a close fight to Jared Cannonier that I thought he won. Strickland will now be fighting Abus Magomedov at his next fight after his win over Nasruddin Imavov. Okay, who else do you have? Roman Dolidze. Well, he just lost to Marvin Vettori. Derek Brunson's lost 2 straight fights to Dricus du Plessis and Jared Cannonier, and Jack Hermanson just lost to Roman Dolidze. Then there's Paulo Costa and Ikram Aliskerov. Those are the next 2 guys I think after that, because again, well, problem, Costa's actually already lost to Adesanya as well, but if Ikram Aliskerov can somehow pull off the victory, who just won his first fight in the UFC over Phil Haas, then there's, a contender as well in the weight class. Then you're even looking at a Nasruddin Imavov, you're looking at maybe a Brendan Allen. It's just that the weight class, Adesanya's slowly wiping it out, and you know what will wipe it out even more? If du Plessis can somehow beat Whitaker and Adesanya beats du Plessis. The only other guy is Sean Strickland. Other than that, there's really no other legit title challenger. Or I guess I would say, this is crazy, but yes, Sean Strickland or the winner of Sean Strickland versus Abus Magomedov would likely be in next line for the championship. Yes, Abus Magomedov, who's only had 1 UFC fight. The only other guy I can think of is Ikram Aliskerov. That's how thin this division is going to be. Even though there are names, Marvin Vettori's 29 years old. He's 9-4-1 in the UFC, who is debatably number 2 or number 3 in the world. And he's in a point where he's stuck, where he probably can't get another title shot, considering he's already lost twice to Adesanya, and he's already lost to Robert Whitaker as well. Now, he'll be getting Jared Cannonier, a guy who's 39, who Cannonier's only losses in the UFC in the middleweight division are, oh, you guessed it, Robert Whitaker and Israel Adesanya. It's just that Whitaker's level is ahead of all the other contenders, and then Adesanya is slightly ahead of Robert Whitaker as well, even though, again, I think you can make the case Whitaker beat Izzy in their last fight for the World Championship. Now, again, Robert Whitaker is in a position right now where he's only 1 win away from getting that World Championship shot again. If he can beat Dricus du Plessis, he will be getting that shot next against Israel Adesanya. In all fairness, I think he will beat Dricus du Plessis to get that next shot. But for now, we're just gonna have to wait and see. And the UFC, again, wants to get Izzy fighting on that card in Australia. Well, you're only giving the winner of du Plessis and Whitaker like 3 months or less than 3 months to recover before that September 9th card. There's a chance they're not even ready for that. So what, do you do Izzy and Jamal Hill? Do you really want to see that? Because everyone else in the weight class has been booked, unless somehow you give Marvin Vettori that fight if he can beat Jared Cannonier. I highly doubt it. But when you look at this fight between Vettori and Cannonier, okay, what does Jared Cannonier have to do to win this fight? He's going to have to keep it standing. He cannot wrestle with Marvin Vettori, because Marvin Vettori will, he'll just ground him. Vettori will ground him, and he will hold him down and not let Jared back up. Jared's a better striker, don't get me wrong, but Marvin Vettori's so hard to put away. I mean, we've seen Marvin in there with heavy hitters, and they have not been able to really wobble Marvin at all. Marvin has not been knocked down yet in the UFC, and he's fought Robert Whitaker, Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya, Kevin Holland. He's fought guys with crazy power, and nobody's been able to put him down yet. He went 5 rounds with Paulo Costa and ate 163 significant strikes from Paulo Costa, and he stayed on the feet and kept walking Costa down. That's how good Vettori is. That's how good of a chin he's got. No one's going to be able to put down Marvin Vettori. You're just going to have to hope to outpoint him. Do I think Jared Cannonier can outpoint Marvin Vettori? Sure. If he keeps the fight standing, yeah. I think Jared Cannonier is a better striker than Marvin Vettori, so if the fight stays on the feet, okay, Jared Cannonier will be able to outstrike Marvin Vettori. He should be able to win a decision. But that's if he can stay on the feet. I don't know if he's able to stay on the feet, because Derek Brunson had some success taking down Jared Cannonier in the first round of their fight. It's just that Brunson kind of tired, and he got, his cardio went away after that first round at UFC 271 against Cannonier, right? Vettori's not going to go away. Vettori's got an incredible gas tank. Vettori's got great cardio. Vettori is going to stay in the fight for 5 rounds. He is in it for that whole 25-minute, he's in it for the whole 25 minutes. And he's not going to go away like Brunson did. And he's going to remain constant with the pressure, not just when the striking, but also in the wrestling as well. I'm not saying Marvin Vettori can't get knocked out. Everyone can get knocked out. But Marvin his chin's so great, and he feels very comfortable with this chin to the point where he can continue to walk down Jared. He can eat punches while also striking in his own right and also looking for a takedown as well. So that's why I think Marvin Vettori is going to win this fight. That's why I think Marvin should be an even bigger favorite than what he is. Only minus 150 is crazy for Marvin Vettori, because I think Vettori is going to win this fight pretty easily. I think he's going to win this fight by decision. Again, I don't think Jared's going to be able to knock him out. I think Vettori's striking game is getting a lot better. And I think Marvin's going to go again to the wrestling a lot, and Vettori's just going to keep him down and hold him down. So again, I think the odds here, I think it's crazy that Marvin's only a minus 150 favorite here. I'm not saying Jared Cannonier is bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the matchup for Marvin Vettori, or the matchup for Jared Cannonier, is incredibly tough. And I know a lot of people might be down on Vettori because of his last fight, because they thought Roman Dolidze beat him. Go back and rewatch that fight. I think a lot of people don't like Vettori in the first place, so they were kind of hoping Dolidze won the fight, and they were hoping for new contenders in the weight class, and Roman Dolidze. Vettori is, Vettori won that fight. When you go back and rewatch it, he's going to come into this fight with Jared Cannonier, and he's going to win. So give me Marvin, the Italian Dream Vettori, to win this fight by unanimous decision. My thing is, where do you go from here with Marvin? So when I look at the middleweight division, I think Israel Adesanya obviously is going to fight Robert Whittaker. I don't think Duplessis is going to get the loser of this fight. So, I mean, I think you're looking at maybe... I think they're going to... Okay, here's what I think. I think they're going to give... But they can't give Pauga Costa Vettori again. So they'll probably give the winner of... But wait, Sean Strickland's not going to fight Vettori because they train together. So if Abus Magomedov beats Strickland, he'll fight Vettori. If not, I think the winner of Costa and Ikram Alaskarov will fight Vettori. Maybe. Because there's really just not many other guys. Then honestly, maybe then you do look at Adrikas Duplessis. But I think I think Whittaker fights for the belt next. And then after that, honestly, it will probably be the winner of Sean Strickland and Abus Magomedov. That's how thin the division is. But I think Vettori is still 2 fights away. He's going to have to win this fight. And I think he's going to have to win one more after this. Likely either against Costa, Ikram Alaskarov, maybe Duplessis, or even an Abus Magomedov if Magomedov is able to somehow unseat Strickland from the ranks of the middleweight division. But folks, for now, going to be going with Marvin, the Italian Dream Vettori, to win this main event by unanimous decision. Give me Vettori to win 50-45. Yes, I think he wins every single round against Cannonier. Vettori gets the job done by unanimous decision. So folks, thank you all for watching our UFC Fight Night predictions here with Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier in the main event from the UFC Apex. If you did like the video, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and make sure to leave a like as well. We'll be back tomorrow for 2 MMA prediction cards here, or prediction videos on the channel, with, of course, both the PFL and Bellator going up tomorrow. So make sure to come back tomorrow for those. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more, and make sure to leave a like again if you did enjoy the video. So folks, thank you for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. I know I said that 5 times. Make sure to leave a comment if you did enjoy as well. Thank you all for watching, and Mamba forever.